Hey guys, a brand new week, and Vispero have an update on upgrades to JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion to share.
This is Double Tap, where blind people talk tech. Here's Scott and Shaun Preece.
Yeah, one piece of tech that is not going into the accessibility crypt. Have I still got it? Oh, it's the accessibility crypt. Ooh, ha, ha. So we can't do that anymore because it's not Halloween.
No, you can. You can't use that after Halloween. That's
is
law,
that the
sir.
law?
Yes.
Is that
I'm
Mr.
make
F
it
law?
God bless you, sir.
Ah, dear. Well, you know what? We had a great show on Friday. We had lots of fun, didn't we? We had.
Well, you did.
Well, I did. I have to say, I got an email from Mr. F after the episode had aired, and he said, "You guys are out of control."
Oh,
I don't know what that means.
Was that also followed by a calendar appointment with HR? I mean, you're taking that like that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, it might well be. I don't know. Maybe that calendar appointment's yet to come. But he managed to type out an email. So we're off to a good start with Mr. F there.
We're all good. Did you have a good weekend?
I did have a nice weekend, actually. It was my mum's birthday on Friday.
Happy birthday, Mama
birthday
Scott.
to Mama Scott. And yeah, she had a lovely time. We got a cake and a card and flowers. All the, usual.
Who are you trying to impress?
Well, my mother, mainly.
Good point. Well made.
Who else? But yeah, no, she had a lovely time. We had a nice day. And it was very nice. We had chippy tea, very popular in the UK, of course, our chippy teas.
Oh, yes. Chips, gravy, mushy peas.
You're very confused about the whole issue of fish and chips.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll go into this for just.
Well, hang on. Let's clarify. Let's clarify. We're doing a lot of clarification on today's show, right? Well, we're going to be talking about JAWS and pricing and all the clarification. This is, by the way, going to be our fourth episode clarifying pricing for Vispero.
Make it any clearer? It'll be like a window. This is ridiculous. Okay.
Well, we should all be able to see by the end of this episode. That's the deal. We shall find out. But one clarification, because fish and chips is well known as a British delicacy, but where you live in Manchester in England, you seem to have a very different approach to the fish and chips thing that we do in Scotland.
Yes, and that is, of course, the holy grail that is gravy. Gravy is delicious. Gravy is just like cheese. You put cheese on top of anything and it's better. Gravy, chips and gravy are the best thing ever. Hello, Canada. I'm thinking of, what do they call it over there?
Well, that's a delicacy in Canada, right?
Poutine. I know. It's poutine. It's like a luxury dish. Well, I live off chips and gravy.
I've heard stories about this. So it can be a luxury, or it can be, cheap end of the scale, 3 a.m., vomiting outside a nightclub.
How dare you? I'm so sorry, Canada. I know that's not true.
Oh, sorry, I'm maybe thinking about Britain, because that's certainly the case for
you're thinking of the
chips and
kebab,
cheese over
extra
here.
Chili sauce.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love chips and gravy. Okay, we'll go into this for a split second, because in Scotland, where I recently visited, it was lovely, thank you. You don't do chips and gravy for one thing. Secondly,
yes,
you do ice cream at your chip shops.
Yeah,
what are you doing?
Because they're all run by the Italians. The Italians run the chip shops in Scotland.
Yes.
And the proper ones do, by the way. And in England, or at least in your part of England, it's the Chinese people that run them. And this makes no sense to me. How did that happen? How did Italians take control of fish and chips in Scotland, but in England, it's the Chinese people that run it?
You know what? We'll save it for the extra. It's very British, so we'll save it for the extra.
That's an interesting situation, isn't it? It's just really weird.
Yeah, I wasn't having fried pizza. That's all I'm saying. It was ridiculous.
Oh, they fry everything here.
Get some gravy on it.
Well, they can fry it and then put gravy on it if you want. Anyway.
Talking of which, what did I do over the weekend? Well, thank you for asking, Stephen Scott.
I'm so glad I didn't.
To try and burn off the fried pizza. I've been in the gym. I've been looking for an app that's accessible, which will give me the heart rate, the distance, the RPM, the cadence, I believe it's called. Oh. I'm talking to our listeners, Stephen. You can tune out. It's absolutely
fine. I'm off. Bye-bye.
I'm waiting for you to hit that boring sound effect.
No, this isn't boring, but I'm just not interested. I'm not going to do it. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, on my new spin bike, I know. Stop it.
Boring. Sorry, you made me do it. You made me do it.
It says it's compatible with like Z Sport and Strava and KinoMap, right? I've tried them all. I can't find anything that's truly accessible. Strava, I thought this is the one because I've heard people talk about that. Even in the login or signing up, the date of birth is inaccessible. I can't set the date of birth, so I can't even sign in so far. Is there anything out there that allows you to connect to this exercise equipment and just get the reading? You know, I just want to know how fast I'm going, how far I've done. Why is this so difficult? If anyone can help me with that, if they can give me any pointers. I know, of course, about, you know, the health app and the workout buddy, but it doesn't give you 100% of the stuff. So, yeah, let me know. And did you also notice in the update to the Meta AI app, it now has Apple Health and Garmin and Strava as new app connections in there. So you can now ask your Meta Ray-Bans, how many steps did I do yesterday? Or how long did I work out for on the treadmill or whatever it is? And it can tell you. That's quite cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, I did get the update. I kind of skipped past that whole Apple Health and Strava thing. But, you know, I get it. I mean, it's cool if it's working, but it's just annoying that these services aren't accessible. I mean, I did hear, now this won't be of interest to you, or maybe it will be, I don't know.
Boring.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
But I think Cobalt Systems, I'm saying this, and did I use the word blind? Because I haven't checked this out myself, but I did read someone on Mastodon saying, and of course that is my source of all news, that Cobalt Systems have now got an accessible pedometer, I think it is. Does that excite you?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I had to work out what a pedometer was. Yes, for counting your steps.
Yeah.
But there's 1,001 apps out there, right? And you're
but not everyone wants an app or has an app, right? It's so.
Well, yeah. Okay. All right. I'll give you that. Yes, that's fine. An accessible pedometer. That's very nice. But I just find it. Anyway, we've talked about inaccessible equipment, you know, gym equipment before.
That's what we do, because that's what the show's all about, is we're talking about how inaccessible the entire world is.
Or how accessible things are. We look at the good stuff as well, Stephen Scott, sometimes. The point with the Meta AI I was going to make anyway was that, again, it brings the whole range closer to the feature set of the Vanguards, right? Because the whole point of the Vanguards was that it had that Garmin and the Strava and the Apple Health integration with it. And you can put the stats. How fast I was going on the bike can be superimposed on your videos that you're taking. Well, you can do that with all of them now in the range. So, yeah, just saying. That's all.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know.
Just saying.
Today we're going to talk about Jaws, ZoomText, and Fusion at the moment, but we're going to sort of then drift into
Confusion.
Jaws.
Thank you.
Confusion, yeah.
Hey, I worked on that.
That was actually quite good, yeah.
Thanks.
Wow. I've got the new title for the show, but you've come up with it. Well done, Shaun Preece.
Play a sound effect.
Your job here is done.
That's it. I'm muting. Good night.
Well,
thank you.
You were actually, because we were out at a very interesting event last week, Accessible Formats in Focus, an event held by the University of Edinburgh, and you're going to hear our experiences of that very soon on the show. In fact, very soon on the podcast, I should say, on the Double Tap Extra podcast, we'll be hearing the full conversations we had there, some amazing people we met, and a great story about accessible formats, which you might think a little bit, boring. I know you might think that.
Hardly the sexiest subject, but actually it was interesting.
And you know how accessible documents can lead to training and knowledge about making the web more accessible. I mean, just like the whole kind of understanding of just basic level understanding of how to format a document can make the huge difference between making websites and other things going forward, PDFs and all of that, more accessible. Yeah. So, and the challenges universities in particular face. Well, we get into all that, and we'll talk about that in a couple of days' time. And that'll be coming up on the Double Tap Extra podcast. So make sure you subscribe now. Or someone will be round. But before that, as part of that, we spoke to Stuart Lawler from Sight and Sound Technology, because the news broke end of last week that Vispero have reconsidered their decision to set a deadline of the end of October as the point where you could upgrade to the latest versions of JAWS. Certain users, certain types of licenses basically had to update by the end of October. They've extended that now to the end of December. And you got the chance to talk to Stuart Lawler about that. Here is that conversation.
So, Stuart, there's some breaking news from Vispero. So before we get to that, though, I just want to go back and sort of give us a recap about all the discussion and conversation that's been going on about the pricing. So just
take us where we were at and what's new.
Yeah, good to be back, Shaun. I was waiting for the breaking news jingle, but anyway, we can live without it.
Sorry.
So where we were was, I suppose, the 31st of this month. The 31st of October is Friday. That was a big cutoff date because that was the date by which you had to upgrade your software and renew your software maintenance agreement in order to continue receiving updates for your JAWS, ZoomText or Fusion software. And what has changed is that deadline for the 31st of this month has been moved to the 31st of December. So there's 2 extra months before you have to upgrade. And if you are 3 steps below the current version, so at time of recording, the current version is 2025. So if you're on 22, 23 or 24, you have until the 31st of March of next year to upgrade. If you're prior to 2022 or 3 steps prior than the current version, then you would have to upgrade by the 31st of December. If you don't do that, you would go on to a subscription next year.
Okay. And can I ask, how did this come about?
I think really Vispero have been listening to feedback from customers, throughout the world. There's been some discussion and I think they have responded and they want to make sure that people have time to get access to the latest version of their softwares. And I think by the end of this week, hopefully 2026 will have launched and people will see some changes in 2026, in particular in relation to how AI is being used. And that's continuing to transform the way in which people are using that software. So I think they've been listening, they've been responding, and hopefully people will see this as a good news story. What I do feel about what we're talking about today is it's going to give people a bit more time to think, a bit more breathing space. And it shows that, I suppose, Vispero are listening and want to they want to engage with the community and make sure, as I say, that people have the chance to use the latest versions of their software where they can.
Fantastic. Stuart, thank you so much. And if people want to learn more, because I'll be honest with you, it's still a little bit confusing for me.
Yes.
If people want to know more and get into the detail of this, where can they go?
I mean, I suppose, as we said on the last time we were all together, Shaun, best thing is please contact us. I know some people's situations are different depending on where you are on your version journey of whatever softwares we're talking about. 01604 798 070 or info@sightandsound.co.uk.
Stuart, thank you.
Thanks, Shaun.
Now, as you noted there, Shaun, confusion is the word that really has come along with a lot of these changes. And it's really been difficult to try and understand what the best path is, especially for those of us who are home users. Now, a lot of the information you're hearing is UK specific, but it may also apply in other areas as well. So the best advice is wherever you are in the world, especially outside the US, I would say in the US, you're going to be contacting Vispero directly. But outside of the United States, in Canada and the UK and beyond, you're going to want to contact your local distributor. Now, Sight and Sound Technology is the distributor for UK and Ireland. So very important to be clear on that. If you have got concerns, contact them in the UK or Ireland. But if you're elsewhere, contact your local Vispero dealer, essentially, so you can get the answers. But Shaun, obviously the confusion thing, it still continues. We're at the point now where we're just about to get into our 4th conversation about this and to get clarity. And someone who wanted to come on and share his thoughts on all of this is Matthew Horspool, an assistive tech expert and a certified JAWS trainer as well. He wants to come on to hopefully clarify on behalf of, well, not on behalf of, speaking for himself, but basically speaking on behalf of Vispero and Sight and Sound, although not officially, but hopefully giving us some clarity. So Matthew, welcome back to Double Tap.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be on the, where are we on now? They said the 9th season, my inaugural appearance on the 9th season. So yeah, really pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's right.
Thanks for keeping up. Well done. Yes.
I'm glad someone around here is keeping score because I've got no idea. I know for a fact we're going to hit the 10-year mark and we are not going to have a clue. Someone's going to be emailing and saying, are you guys not 10 years old? And we'll be like, Are we? Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Listen, you've been keeping score on a number of things, actually. And, of course, the controversy, let's just say, around JAWS and pricing. And I think there's a lot of conversations we can have around JAWS, and we're going to be having a lot of interesting chats around JAWS and updates to JAWS, in particular 2026, which has brought with it a lot of, let's just say, interesting new developments. I've been following my Mastodon feed with interest and with popcorn, I might add, because so many views are being espoused about this. But we'll come back to that later. I want to talk about the pricing model because you've got some specific thoughts on this that you want to share. We heard earlier, of course, from Sight and Sound, Stuart Lawler, kind of giving us that update, a brief update on the latest news from Vispero concerning updates and upgrades and the amount of time people have to do that. But you want to give us a bit of an update from your perspective as well, and to clarify some things that you think perhaps the industry can't say.
Well, not necessarily that the industry can't say, but I think probably when you're in the industry, you're thinking about it very much from the inside out, probably. And I have the luxury of being part of the industry through doing JAWS training and things like that, but being just far enough away from the industry that I can still think like a user, and so can still sort of really see where all the confusion is, and perhaps see some of how that confusion is manifesting itself, and how we might be able to communicate things in a way that might alleviate some of that, let's say.
Okay, all right. Well, let's dive in then. So what clarification do you want to bring to this? Because I mean, there's a lot to this story in terms of the various parts of. I mean, obviously we've chatted about.
I think that's part of the problem here. I think there is a lot of confusion. All the posts I see on social media, people are saying, "Is this the case? Is this so many seems to be so many situations where something else applies." So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this, Matthew. You could put any light on it.
Yeah, 100%. So I think the first thing to say is that there's a lot that's changing. There's also a lot that's staying the same. And I think what we've probably done is talked a lot about what's changing and not talked about what's staying the same. And that's probably not helped people to understand it, really. The big thing that's staying the same, and I think the thing that's getting lost in translation a little bit, is that even after all of these deadlines that we've talked about, it was the 31st of October, now it's the 31st of December. I don't imagine it will move again, but it might be. We're not being forced to move over to a subscription. So, the 10th of February 2026, that's a random date. There's no significance of that date, but I've decided I want to buy a new JAWS license. I don't have to buy it on a 1 or a 2 or a 3 year subscription. I can carry on and buy the same perpetual license that I always bought. And that is potentially more expensive up front. In fact, it probably almost certainly is more expensive up front, but I don't have the same long-term costs of a subscription. So if I buy a 2-year subscription, and that's going to cost me, I don't know, £1,600 or so, every 2 years I've got to keep renewing that subscription at £1,600. This is for JAWS Pro, of course. This is outrageous. Who on earth is going to pay £1,600 every 2 years for JAWS Pro? I could just buy a perpetual license of JAWS Pro with a 2-year SMA, and at the end of that 2 years, I could just buy a new SMA for about £450, £500, which is still a lot of money, but it's nowhere near £1,600. So subscription options are available, and for some people, those subscriptions are, potentially useful. If you're an employer who, for example, has got someone on a 9-month internship, and you're not expecting to renew that contract to the end of the 9 months, of course, it's cheaper to buy JAWS Pro for $880 on a 1-year subscription than it is to buy a perpetual license. But if you're going to be using JAWS indefinitely, the perpetual license is still available. And I just want to make that ultra clear, because I think a lot of the messaging has been around, subscriptions are available, and that's kind of overshadowed the fact that it's not the only option.
But that conversation is coming from the people who are selling the product. So I wonder, where are you getting your information from? Because you're not speaking here from the view or the perspective of Sight and Sound Technology. You're speaking as an individual. You're not speaking on behalf of them. You're not speaking on behalf of Vispero. So where are you getting this information from and the confidence of this?
So I'm actually getting it from the messaging that everybody's been putting out. It's there. It's just in the small print. If you read back through the Sight and Sound newsletters that have come out and the Vispero newsletters that have come out, it's all still there. If you look on the Sight and Sound website, you can still see JAWS Professional, JAWS Home perpetual licenses. You can still see them. They're still there. One of the messages that's been coming out very clearly in all of this is all new perpetual licenses are now being sold with an SMA. Well, that then implies there must be a perpetual license to buy in the first place. Otherwise, you can't say that all new perpetual licenses are coming with an SMA if there isn't a new perpetual license to buy.
No, that's true. And I see that's what I took away from it as well. And I think you're so right to highlight this, that there has been so much confusion, and maybe there's not anyone to blame for that. It's just, I don't know. You see so many posts, you see so many conflicting articles on this, and it is confusing. So a perpetual license means that if you bought, let's say, JAWS 2025 perpetual license, you could carry on using that for as long as you like, or as long as it was functioning, right?
Yeah,
is that what we're talking about?
Yes, and that's the big difference between a JAWS perpetual license and a JAWS subscription license. So if you buy a perpetual license of JAWS 2025, or indeed 2026, because it's just come out, you buy a perpetual license of JAWS 2026. You buy that. This show goes out presumably on the 3rd of November, let's say. So if I buy a perpetual license today on the 3rd of November 2025, that perpetual license will come with a 2-year SMA, which will run till either the 2nd or the 3rd of November 2027. So I can keep my JAWS up to date, until 2027. After 2027, okay, unless I buy another SMA, I can't keep it up to date. But that JAWS 2027 build that I'm on at that point will continue to function forever and ever and ever until obviously a Windows update comes out that breaks it. That's a really important distinction. If I bought it on a subscription and the subscription lapsed, it wouldn't matter what version of JAWS I was on. That subscription would automatically revert back to demo mode, and there'd be no way of getting out of demo mode without buying a whole new subscription.
Right. Okay. Now that makes sense, and I understand that, but I was under the misunderstanding, it seems, that the perpetual licenses were being almost put on a time limit of 3 years, but that isn't the case.
It doesn't look like it. I mean, the thing is, changes can be made at any time. So what's current now? I mean, who knows where we'll be in 2 years' time? I mean, by the time we get to 2 years down the line, they might very well be saying, actually, in hindsight, we've changed our mind. Everybody's got to go over to subscription. But for the time being, no. So what's been announced, as far as I can understand it, what's been announced the other day, which I think is very welcome, by the way. I think this is a really good step. I think it's a really good balance of the needs of Vispero to make money versus the needs of the consumer to have time and to do what's right for them. You've got until the end of December to upgrade any version of JAWS. You could be on like JAWS 12 and you could upgrade it to JAWS 2026. All right, it would be horrendously expensive. You probably wouldn't, but you could. And you've got until the end of December to do that. As of the 1st of January 2026, you can still upgrade to the latest version of JAWS if you are 3 versions behind or newer. And my understanding of that is that that will continue indefinitely. So in 2026, the latest version of JAWS is 2026, therefore I can upgrade my JAWS if I'm on 2023 or newer. In 2027, that goalpost will shift, so I can upgrade if my JAWS is 2024 or newer, and in 2028 it would be 2025 or newer. And then obviously as we get towards people having time-based SMA, so an SMA would now be valid for 2 years rather than 2 versions. So if you've got an SMA that expires, again, the 3rd of November 2027, if on the 5th of November 2027 you want to purchase a new SMA, you would be able to do that now because you would be within the 3 versions or within the 3 years. So the 3-year thing, I'm pretty sure, is an indefinite thing, at least until the next round of changes comes along.
Listening to you talk, this feels like a very long way round to saying, you know what, we at Vispero need to make some money. We can't just leave products to languish. We need to make money to develop and continue. We have to increase those prices, and we have to make this, laid out in such a way that people can go out and buy products and continue to be able to update those products fairly regularly, with a need attached to that, the need to actually update as well. Which, I'm not against that. We all realize these companies, in order to exist, need to make money. That's important. But who's to say that if I'm sitting here with a JAWS license of 2021, say, and I just think to myself, oh, to hell with it, Matthew, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to go through all this carry on. JAWS 2021 is working fine. It's going fine on my Windows 11 machine here. I don't need to update. I'll just stay as I am. You've got concerns for people who are doing that.
To be honest, not from a licensing point of view anymore, really. I mean, the bottom line is you won't be able to upgrade that license to 2026, 2027, whatever. You'd have to buy a new license. To be honest, I'm not really sure that an upgrade would be very cost effective anyway. So, in terms of the economics of the situation, buying a new license when you're that far behind is probably not that big a deal. Where I have concerns really is in terms of software changes all the time. And what we're finding with newer software now is that actually it's really hard for the users to stay in control of when those updates are applied, because they're more and more cloud-based. So if you look at software like Teams, for example, Teams can just update whenever it feels like it, really, or at least it's very, very hard to stop it from updating. The same goes for things like the new Outlook. How do you actually prevent the new Outlook from updating? It's even more true for things like Google Docs. If you use Google Docs or Google Sheets or something, Google is in complete control of when it pushes that update out to you. And if it pushes an update that breaks screen reader accessibility, then there's nothing you can do to roll that back. So it's incumbent upon the screen reader manufacturers, the screen reader developers, to get that fixed as soon as possible. But if you've left your updates to lapse, if you're on JAWS 2021, they're not going to be rolling those bug fixes into a 2021 release. They're only going to be having those bug fixes in whatever the current release is. So what you might find is you're using Google Sheets, and in fact, even home users might be using Google Sheets. Let's say you're working with a small organization, you're doing some volunteering, and your volunteer rota is in a Google Sheet. You might be working with that Google Sheet quite happily on JAWS 2021. Now, Google pushes an update, it breaks it, JAWS 2027 fixes it, but now you've got a big bill to get yourself up onto JAWS 2027. Whereas if you just kept up your SMAs in the first place, and on JAWS Home, they're even more reasonable than on JAWS Pro. I think the current price for a JAWS Home SMA is only about £155 a year. About £155 every 2 years. So if you keep up those SMA payments, you can stay on the latest version, and when a problem like this strikes, you've not got a big bill to worry about just to keep up to date with, what is essentially a bug fix.
I'm not sure how I feel about this, to be honest. I just don't. I don't know if it's just the amount of information, and of course, I'm not a JAWS user, as in, I haven't bought the software, so maybe that's why I'm looking in at this, thinking it just seems so complicated. Once you're actually in the system, maybe it isn't as complicated. But I don't know. I mean, you're talking about there of keeping it updated and keeping that payment going, which is basically a subscription. If we're talking about keeping an SMA going, right? A yearly or 2 yearly one. If we're keeping that subscription going purely on the off chance of a service becoming inaccessible and we needing that fix for it, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Surely we should just be able to, okay, it's not working anymore. I'm going to have to buy the license again for JAWS 2027, let's say, that fixes the issue I'm finding. But this paying in front of a problem that may occur, I don't know.
So, I mean, in that sense, it's always really been the case. I mean, if we just completely forget about subscriptions for a moment and just talk about perpetual licenses, actually, perpetual licenses and SMAs have been the way that JAWS upgrades have worked for the past, 20 years, 25 years, something like that. Yes. So, yeah, and I mean, in a way, it kind of is a subscription. It's just a subscription by a different name, really. And the stakes for not, quote, subscribing, unquote, the stakes for not renewing your SMA on time are lower because you can still carry on using what you're already using. So it's kind of partly a subscription, partly a payment plan, whatever you want to call it, really. And I mean, yeah, of course you could. You could just say, look, I'm not going to keep this up and I'll cut my losses. And if there's a problem, 5 years down the line, I need to upgrade, well, I'll just go and buy a new license. Of course you could do that. The question is whether that would be the most cost-effective way to do it. Yeah. If you're only paying, and again, of course, prices can rise and things can change, but if you're only paying £155 every 2 years for an SMA, and a new license of JAWS, that we're talking JAWS Home now, costs $995 at current time of recording, it's going to take you, like 12 years to figure it out. Or something to reach that. So do you see what I mean?
It's almost like an insurance here.
Very much right. So. Yeah.
But this is where I'm so confused by all this. I mean, look, this is the fourth interview we've done to, in quotes, clarify this issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I still don't fully understand where we're at. I mean, what you've just said to me is that I can go now and get the SMA and I can upgrade my 2025 or whatever license I'm on to 26 or 27 or however it works, whatever the way it goes. I can go get that and I can pay that amount of money. You said £155 for the 2 years or whatever. But the way I was looking at it was I was going to have to go and spend what I thought was going to be a small amount of money over 3 years. Actually, was going to be, I can't remember, was it £1,300 or so? I think I worked it out at for on the home side of things. You're saying that's not the case.
It doesn't have to be the case. I think where subscriptions really come into their own is if you're buying them on 1 year terms, really, I think is where subscriptions come into their own. There's no doubt that if you can't afford £995, which is still a lot of money, and there's just no getting away from that. There are just going to be people who can't afford that. Even
especially all up front. If they maybe split it up over 12 months, perhaps, but even that's still quite a lot of money over even 12 months.
Yep. So, if you can't afford to buy the perpetual license or whatever, then for sure, $420 for a 1 year subscription, it's still a lot of money, but it's cheaper than $995 plus for a perpetual home use.
You know what else is cheaper? NVDA. It's free. Doesn't cost any money.
Yeah, it's true. And the thing is that this is the great thing about choice, right? I think if you have used a demo version of JAWS and you've used NVDA and you can't really tell the difference and you think that NVDA is a good fit for your needs, I'm certainly not here to tell you, listen, you should get JAWS because it's the best. I like JAWS. I'm a JAWS user. I would struggle to switch to NVDA at this point, to be completely honest with you, but I'm just one person. And you are absolutely right. NVDA is a very viable option for a lot of people.
And look, let's be brutally honest here. When we're talking about the workplace, even if the individual concerned doesn't really need JAWS, they would absolutely be fine with NVDA. Everything that they do within their job doesn't require. They're not a mathematician or a scientist, or they're not going through 300-page documents every day. That kind of thing, right? It could just be admin tasks. Using email. Perhaps using an internal system that may well be accessible or not. And of course, that's another issue, which I know JAWS certainly and Vispero talk about a lot, being an area where they cover very well. But let's just say that everything's accessible to NVDA. Even in that situation, if JAWS was an option and the employer's paying for it or a government grant's paying for it, that might be the best solution, in which case that's fine. I think the problem comes for me when it comes to those home users. I'm thinking about people like myself at home who are not going to be buying the enterprise or the business or the pro versions. And the amount of money it seemed I would have to drop in order to get up to date with JAWS. Again, no issue with a company trying to make money to develop great software. No issue with that at all. But I do have an issue with them not making it easier to buy when, so many of the people out there who are wanting access to it are perhaps not in a position to be able to afford those huge sums of money up front. That was my concern.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think that concern is still there. I've talked about buying a perpetual license. You can still do it, but you have to be able to afford that money up front. There's no payment plan for a perpetual license. There's no payment plan for a subscription license. That is an issue. Equally, I think there are people who do in fact have their JAWS licenses funded, and they might only be JAWS home licenses. So I'm thinking of people, for example, you're 18, 19, you're going off to university. DSA, Disabled Students Allowance, for a lot of people would fund the initial 995 or what have you for a JAWS perpetual license. And so if you've got that JAWS perpetual license through DSA and it comes to the end of your DSA course and you want to get that up to date, well, you've now got an opportunity to get it up to date by only paying the SMA cost. Assuming, of course, that DSA didn't fund a subscription, which they might do. And I mean, if DSA funds a subscription, then that's a problem, because then you've got to keep up the 420, 840, whatever, however you want to pay it, subscription costs. But if you're able to get that initial funding, and you're able to get that initial funding for a perpetual license rather than a subscription license, then the cost when you come out of university, or whatever, the cost when that funding runs out for you to maintain it, assuming that you do maintain it in the first place, should not be too terribly unreasonable.
Honestly, I am so confused by all of this.
I could hear your head in your hands.
My head is in my hand. And the thing that gets me here, right? I've had some people who have written into me and said, it sounds like you're really up against JAWS on this one or Vispero on this one. I'm really not. I'm actually really not. Because, I want them to succeed and survive. I don't want them to be crushed by this. I'm genuinely concerned if this confusion keeps up and people are just confused by it and think, well, do you know what, as a home user, I'm off to NVDA. I don't know what kind of impact that has if all the home users just disappear off and use NVDA and everyone in employment continues to use JAWS. Maybe that's okay. I don't know. And the price can go up against business and all the rest. But I look at other models. I just look at other companies who do this. They have a personal subscription model. They have an enterprise model. Usually you have to contact the company to find the right fit because it's usually based on the size of the business or whatever. There are very simple plans. And I just think, the way it's described is ultimately that there's a huge legacy of this SMA and perpetual licensing and all that's been there for many years, as you say, Matthew. But I really do think that this is perhaps the time that what they should have done, my advice would have been, come up with a new structure, wipe out the old, scrap it, start fresh tomorrow with a new model. This is the price. And actually, if they had got that home pricing right with perhaps a monthly payment option that was a little bit more affordable, I think they could have actually increased more sales than not. I think people who were on NVDA, like Shaun here, might have said, do you know what? Maybe I will jump in and try JAWS. Why not?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, if Vispero come back and say, look, it's just not sustainable if we go to that model, we don't think the revenue income, it would be enough to sustain maintenance and, development. What do you do from that? It is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. And the thing is, I do JAWS training, so I see JAWS in the workplace. I see JAWS at university, so I see that side of things. I don't see the business side of it. I don't know what their profit margins are in any of this. And I mean, I'm not going to comment on their reasoning for changing their prices. I think really what worries me about all of this is that because it's so confusing, you end up with people going for, as I say, subscription licenses who don't need subscription licenses, paying over the odds for it, and B, falling off a cliff edge if, like going back to it, DSA or Access to Work has funded a subscription license because that's what they've been told to fund. And then you find that actually, I had JAWS for 2 years or 3 years because Access to Work funded it. My employer now is not able to keep up the subscription cost, and now I haven't got JAWS at all because it's gone down to 40-minute mode. And that really worries me. And so my message from all of this is perpetual licenses are still available, and look them up and consider whether actually, in spite of all of the talk about subscriptions, consider whether the perpetual license is still actually the best way to go. Because at least then, if you can't afford to keep it up to date, at least you've got a version that will carry on working.
I wonder if long-term JAWS is going to become a professional-only product. I think it may well go that way because, I see already some reports coming out from JAWS 2026 users, especially those in the home annual license in the US, who are saying they can't access certain features because they are for 2026, I guess, professional versions only, like the AI web page summary feature. If you try and invoke that through the command that they've given for it, it actually says that you need to be on a different license to access it. So if we're starting to break it up, even internally in the feature set to be, this is for home users, this is for pro, or this isn't available to you on this license, that's putting a real dividing line between those who have and haven't.
Well, is that a bad thing? To make a distinguish between the professional and the home? It's always been.
Well, it depends if you have to climb Mount Everest to get to the thing you're looking for. If you have to pay a huge amount of money to get to that feature that you would think, considering as well, there was an increase in pricing for the home annual license in the US as well, I believe, but a $10 increase per year. You would think if you're paying more, you would get the same or equal to others.
So this is where every cloud has a silver lining, right? So that the home annual license is not available in the UK. I would really like a full and frank explanation of why the home annual license is not available in the UK. I really would. I think, I've heard various explanations about the servers are not GDPR compliant, etc. I've heard, people say, oh, well, actually, it's difficult to manage and it would be much easier if Vispero could manage it centrally. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I want Vispero to work harder on this. I think really we're long past the point where we need a home annual license in the UK. And I would really like to see a concerted effort to get a home annual license in the UK sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But every cloud has a silver lining. There is a difference between the home annual license and the home license. And my understanding of this particular restriction...
just stop right there, right? I mean, that's all you need to say to... If you want to just... Yeah. Really, if I was to take a clip of this interview and try and summarize, if I was asking AI to summarize the confusion in this, well, there's a difference between the home annual and the home license. Hang on, what?
Yeah. So the home annual, the home annual license costs less than the home license. And I mean, is there a need for a bit of a rebrand there to properly explain the difference between these two?
Yeah.
But there is a difference. And so the license that we get in the UK by subscription, which is the home license and not the home annual license, would have slightly different restrictions on it in terms of the Page Explorer feature. And so the home license that we get in the UK will have a certain degree of Page Explorer access that the home annual license in the US doesn't get.
Wow.
Okay, even more confused. The only thing is, I just hope that we're not going to have to interview someone else, next week, saying, actually, let me just clarify even more, because we have done that, as you said, Stephen. We've had to have that conversation a few times.
4 times. This is our 4th chat. I love talking to Matthew, so this is great. But and I want to say as well, just for clarity, and this will hopefully be of interest to you as well, Matthew. We are going to be talking to Ryan Jones very soon on the show in the next couple of days, in fact. So, listen out to that conversation, because we are going to be, asking some serious questions. And look, Ryan's coming on to talk about JAWS 2026, and I'm sure he wants to tell us about all these great new features, which I want to know about too. But I'm just really struggling to understand the logic behind this pricing structure. And I understand that obviously there are licenses ongoing, people have paid for things, so you can't entirely dismantle the operation tomorrow. You can't just stick a knife in it and say, right, as of tomorrow, this is all new, this is where we're going to go, because people would lose out on that, and I understand that. But I wonder, I know you're saying perpetual licenses are a thing, or what was it you said? I'm even confused by this. What was it? Is it perpetual you can still buy? That's still
You can. The old style perpetual license, at least at the time we're recording this, the old style perpetual license you can still buy.
I think that is what's going to go. I think they're going to move. I do think eventually through time, maybe not this year or maybe even next year, but they're surely going to move it all to that subscription model I'm talking about to simplify all this. That's surely where they're headed.
They quite possibly will. And when they do, we'll have another conversation about how cost effective that really is. But while they're not, get in and buy a perpetual license, because it's a much cheaper long term. I mean, if you look at the first year, a perpetual license is going to be hugely more expensive in most cases. Even in the first 2 years, it might be a bit more expensive. But if you look at 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you start to realize very quickly that actually the perpetual license is not just a little bit cheaper, it's orders of magnitude cheaper, and it continues to be cheaper the longer you run it.
And just as I get my big can of petrol here to pour on the fire yet again.
Well done.
Because if we're not confused enough, is everything you've just said UK specific? Or is that applicable across the board?
I don't know, really.
You're talking from the UK perspective, right?
So my understanding of this is that certainly at one point there were different timelines for different markets. So my understanding was that actually what Vispero were doing was going to be consistent across all markets, but that it was being rolled out in stages. And so different countries would get it at different times. I don't know if that's completely true, but certainly speaking to colleagues in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, in European countries, in Germany and the Netherlands, we're all seeing the same model. We're just seeing it come at different times. Now, I don't know this latest round of changes, particularly with upgrade deadlines and things like this. I don't know whether we're going to see that globally or whether that's just a UK thing, or again, whether we're going to see it, but we're going to see it with different timelines depending on different markets.
Okay. I need to lie down.
It is a lot, isn't it? It's a lot to take on with this. And look, again, I think in fairness, there are a lot of people who will be getting this fairly quickly and saying, why is this taking so long for these guys to figure this out? But, Shaun and I are not in the way of this. I bought my license many, many moons ago. I upgraded it every so often, usually around Site Village in the UK when the discounts came along, and I would just, buy my upgrade there. Didn't really know what I was buying, just kind of knew I was getting an upgrade and I could get the latest version, and that was all I really knew. But I'm glad to hear that, as that would have been, that perpetual license that I would have bought then is still available, because I think for a lot of people, they were thinking, well, I can't afford to go and spend that amount of money on a license upgrade. So, I'm off to look for something else. So I think this might help a few people along the way today, Matthew. I find it reassuring, but also slightly unnerving that you've had to come here from the perspective of someone not as part of Sight and Sound, not as part of Vispero, to explain this clearly to us. But I'm glad you did. I'm glad we've got a bit more clarity on this today. I say a bit more. I'm still a bit foggy. But
I think for new JAWS users, new JAWS users are going to be the people who struggle the most, and particularly new JAWS users who are not au fait with blindness and the blind community. I think the people who are going to be hit hardest by this are people who lose their sight, who are not in the blind community, who an access to work assessor looks at the pricing and goes, well, a 1-year subscription is much cheaper than a perpetual license, so we'll go with a 1-year subscription or a 2-year, or whatever. And the people who are losing their sight just don't have anyone to talk to because they don't have access to the community. I think actually those are the people who I'm most worried about. I think for long-term JAWS users who understand the current pricing model, I think just keep up with your SMA payments as you always did anyway, and just focus on what's the same rather than what's changed. And honestly, I think you'll be fine.
And I will say as well, that's nothing unusual when it comes to this world of assistive tech. Let's be honest about it. When I was certainly... I'd like to think things have improved, but in my early days of employment, it was someone turning up from, a company called Humanware telling me that Humanware was a great product to buy. And I'm like, great, we'll buy Humanware then, because they're the best, right? And I asked the question, is there anything else out there I should think about? No, definitely not. You should definitely go with Humanware. It's the best product, said the Humanware representative. And I went with it because guess what? That's what you do. And where did that come from? That came from those assessors, as you talk about, either connecting with those companies and those companies rightfully getting in there first and saying, hey, look, we sell our products. The problem was I didn't know anything else to know. I wasn't educated enough or knowledgeable enough. I had no one to ask what is the best Braille display to buy. I think we've got more access to information now, but sadly still within our bubble, in our world. And as you've just said, Matthew, it's a really key point in all of this. If you're new to sight loss, if you find out you're losing your sight today, you're going to go blind. I'm not maybe suggesting Braille might be the answer for you at that stage, but it's certainly a screen reader would. You might not have a clue where to turn, and that's why it's important we have these conversations and we have them publicly as we do, because people do need to understand this stuff and understand what it's all about. Let's hope the companies figure it all out. But for now, I really appreciate your time, Matthew. Thank you for coming on. You've got a busy day today, so I appreciate you coming on and sharing this information with us.
It's no problem. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, Shaun, so that's all cleared up then, right? We're all fine now.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely clear as... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out. I'm interested to hear people's thoughts. I will say that. And at this point, it's always good to remind people how to get in touch. Here's how.
Get in touch with Double Tap. Email feedback@doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. And now you can send an audio or video message to us on WhatsApp. That number is 1-613-481-0144.
Okay, let's get into some other stories then, because I don't know if you've been seeing this. Doing the rounds on social media. I've seen the story pop up, but of course it's across all of tech media. WhatsApp are preparing a launch of an Apple Watch app, Shaun Preece.
Oh, this is amazing. This is fantastic news. And this is slightly annoying because I just installed Watch Chat on my Apple Watch and paid the yearly subscription.
Oh, so you spend money and... Oh, Shaun. Poor Shaun.
No, it's kind of... Didn't really understand why it went away from the Apple Watch. I mean, it seems like the perfect platform to have WhatsApp on your Apple Watch, right?
Yeah, clarify this for me, because I can't remember the article I read this from. Often what happens with these publications is once one, like The Verge or CNET or whoever gets the story, all the other ones follow and kind of, refer back to that original source. So I can't remember which one I read this on. But in one of the articles, it said this is the first time that WhatsApp ever has had an Apple Watch app. And I'm thinking, no, it's not.
That doesn't seem right to me. But
I remember. I am sure. I remember having one very early on, and it disappeared. They shelved it because, well, for whatever reason, whether they thought no one was using it, whether they thought the watch at that time perhaps wasn't really, taken off in the way that it has.
Is that the Mandela effect, as it's known? Are we misremembering that? I don't know. But yeah, I thought there was one. Maybe it was just the web version. Maybe they're talking about the first time there's actually been a specific native app for the Apple Watch.
Maybe.
But that would seem strange because WhatsApp seemed to be moving towards everything is just basically a web wrapper, which this could be. So either way, look, I'm so sick of getting that notification saying, from WhatsApp, someone's left you an audio
message. Yeah.
What can you do with it? I can't listen to it or anything. So, yeah, this is great news. Anything that makes more use of the Apple Watch. Yeah, I would love this.
Yeah.
As long as it's accessible.
Well, that's the thing. We shall find out. Look, before we go today, I want to hand over to one of our listeners, Gavin, who has been in touch with us many times. And today he's in touch to share his thoughts on an app called Vinted.
Hi, Stephen and Shaun. Gavin in Edinburgh here. Loving the show, and just wanted to give you a quick note on an app, Vinted. That's Vinted. I just wanted to say, because I think we're quite quick to say when an app or website or service isn't done well, whereas I would say this app, the accessibility is done well. I'm using the app on iOS, and I can buy and sell products at will, essentially. Obviously, things like taking pictures if you are selling a product is going to be more difficult. And then also evaluating pictures if you're buying a product will be more difficult. Obviously, you can send those off quite easily to Be My Eyes or other services, but that's probably to be expected, I would say. But the main reason I've been using it is to buy little bits of tech, but also not things like iPhones or anything like that, just smaller things, and vinyls. So I've bought, I think, 4 or 5 vinyls recently, all either brand new or perfect condition, all worked perfectly, been delivered straight to the door. And when I was looking at getting a new keyboard for my MacBook Air, I thought, I've never had the Logitech MX keys. Let's have a look at that. So I did, and I purchased a full-sized, with number pad, Logitech MX keys, brand new. There was used options available for, drumroll, £28. Now that was, with delivery, £31 to my door. Perfect condition, works great, and paired it straight to my MacBook, and it works great. Yeah, no problem at all. Box instructions are all there, and the person just said it was an unwanted gift. So I'm very sorry to Stephen's bank balance. Shaun, I think seems like a kind of bargain you would absolutely love. And yeah, I haven't seen any blindness specific products out there. But certainly if you want fast chargers, additional cables, keyboards, these kind of things, they are absolutely flooded on this app. And like I say, you can use Apple Pay and you select to get delivered to your door. Sorry, Stephen's probably now bankrupt, but...
Yeah, thanks for that, Gavin. Appreciate that. Yeah, now I'm bankrupt, thanks to you. But that sounds rather interesting. That was Gavin there from Edinburgh reviewing the Vinted app. We'll definitely check that out, Gavin, because I have heard of it, and it does sound pretty cool. There you go. That's it for today. Thank you for all the contributions. Thank you to Matthew Horspool for attempting to clear up yet again the confusion around Vispero pricing. We are, as I mentioned, going to be speaking to Ryan Jones from Vispero very soon on the show. So stay tuned for that. For now, though, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.